What's going on, folks? Welcome to the bar. Today we're going to be going over chapter 9 of Kaiju number 8. I see in the future saying the title of the manga and the chapter number is probably going to become confusing. Oh boy. Also, before we get started, I gotta say this, if you are not caught up on Kaiju number 8, my video today is going to be very spoilery. Kaiju number 8 videos in general are going to be rather spoilery. This is the beginning of the manga, you know? So if you haven't read this week's chapter, I suggest you read it and come on back. Or if you haven't read Kaiju number 8, period, go ahead and click on the video above and get educated about this amazing manga. And if you haven't heard about September's giveaway, be sure to stick around till the end of the video. I'll be elaborating a little bit more about what that is. So do your favorite bartender a solid and subscribe to the channel, and be sure to hit that notification bell. It's the only way you'll catch a video when it first comes out. So let's dive in and see who survived the kaiju attack. So, the newest chapter of Kaiju number 8 begins with the Proctors arriving on scene of Kafka's Kaiju showdown. They find out that Kikoru and two others, Reno and Kafka, took cover in a nearby shelter. Hoshina, Mina's partner in all of this, is kind of looking very closely at the gruesome scene of the kaiju annihilation, and we're learning a little bit more about this dude. Besides the fact that it's always hard to trust the character whose eyes are always perpetually closed, this guy is actually pretty intuitive. He realizes that the kaiju that was completely obliterated here, it's similar to the one that was 3 months ago when Kaiju number 8 first appeared, and he puts 2 and 2 together. These two incidents are linked. And just like that, the chapter flashes over to the hospital scene where once again one of our protagonists is bedridden. Turns out Kafka did suffer some small fractures, which leads me to believe that his human form might have an extended amount of durability, but for the most part he's just as vulnerable as the next person while he's in his human form. But when he transforms, it's a completely different game. Reno, chilling in the room peeling an apple, states to Kafka that Shinomiya is being helped with the greatest science that the world has to offer, and we really don't have to worry about her right now. To which Kafka kind of snaps and goes, "Yo, I need me some of that science too. Like, hook a man up with some science. How come I don't get no science?" But in typical Kafka fashion, he reflects in hindsight. He states that going up against all that competition, it serves as a reminder that chasing your dreams and getting beat at the one thing that you do, you just can't give up from it. Every second, every minute of it is going to be a struggle. But in the end, the chase is what gets you so fired up that you don't even care about, the whole losing aspect of it. You're just trying to get to that goal. So you just get yourself all fired up and you really don't give a shit. And that was the reminder that Kafka needed to go forward. And because of Reno's initial push, he was able to see that. But Kafka thanks the kid, and we see from outside the hospital room wall, Mina stands there suspiciously, and in my opinion a bit panicked. I like to think that she was trying to make sure Kafka was okay. She pretends to be standoffish and aloof, but let's be real, she knows why she's here. Mina then marches into the room to the surprise of both men and thanks them for risking their lives to save Shinomiya. Completely taken aback, neither replies to her, and whatever happened between her and Kafka must be pretty sad as Kafka reaches out and then pulls his hand away, realizing that he hasn't met his goal yet, and he isn't going to talk to her until he becomes an officer. Either way though, we really have to think, we don't know how much Mina just heard. She might have heard a little too much. Then the story pans over to the final little part, which sounds like somebody listening to radio accounts of what transpired during the test earlier that day. The owner of that phone hears that there wasn't any casualties despite the kaiju springing back to life. Shocked, 0 people died, it's revealed that the person sitting in the bathroom listening to the report is the friggin' humanoid kaiju. The weirdest part about it is, the speech bubbles. They're not altered in any way whatsoever to kind of make us think that this thing is a kaiju. Even when Kafka speaks, it kind of has a weird, highlight around it, but then sometimes it doesn't. And then I guess that's supposed to be an inkling that this is a completely normal human voice. But yeah, the humanoid kaiju is completely baffled, wondering why nobody died, and he chalks it up to maybe one of those captains being really strong. The kaiju's phone then begins to ring, and on top of that, the kaiju knows how to answer it. Apparently he's supposed to be working, and right now he's on break? The kaiju respectfully says to his boss, yes sir, I'll be right there. He was just putting himself together. And we see his body literally begin to mutate and bubble, and a human head appears at the top. He's literally putting himself together. Then he starts zipping up a familiar outfit. The kaiju in human clothing walks out, stating that humans are so fussy over time, and a familiar voice calls out to the newbie saying that they were worried about him. When the kaiju replies, yeah, I got a bad case of the runs. See, now nothing diffuses further questions like saying you almost shit your pants, especially to the guys that the monster is deceiving, Kafka's old buddies. the disposal unit. The chapter closes out with the unit wishing their two co-workers well in the exam after finding out the testing exam had some sort of accident. Meanwhile, the friggin' thing behind them is trying to keep his head on straight. So yeah, that's the end of chapter 9. Personally, with all the action in the past few chapters, I was ready for a few chapters of fleshing out the story a little bit more. I'd like to find out if Kaiju number 8 is actually doing well, because they already announced that every 3 chapters they're going to be taking a break, and to be honest, this is a great way to keep your artistic team refreshed. If it gives us a great manga to read week after week, I'm all for it. And I'm all for people not working themselves into an early grave. As for my 2 cents about the chapter, we're gonna jump back to this scene right here when they're in the hospital. Kafka, for all intents and purposes, admits that he might have just failed the test, but now he takes the time out to thank Reno. Because without Reno, the fire that was inside of him was pretty much dead, and he forgot about what drove him to become a self-defense force officer. And Kafka always tries to deflect with humor, but immediately he always gets dragged back down to earth and he's forced to reflect on whatever just happened. It's a mystery as to why Kafka quit at trying to become an officer, and to be honest, I kinda don't want him becoming an officer in general. I know that's kind of his dream, but at the same time, the people that he knows and cares about, they're in danger. They made a point in the beginning of the story to tell us that disposal was always the second part of the battle against a kaiju, so it's going to be interesting to see where the story plays out. The fact that the lead proctor showed up at the hospital to thank the 2 students for saving the top student makes me think that, yeah, I guess Reno and Kafka are both going to get into the defense force. But now the question for me becomes how long before everyone finds out Kafka's secret and kicks him out of the defense force. But moving on to the next point that I want to talk about this guy. The first villain of the series that can pretty much bring kaiju back to life that have already been destroyed by the defense force. And the cliffhanger for this week has this son of a bitch as the newbie for the friggin' job where you're around dead kaiju all day. All this guy has to do is make it come back to life and then roll up and kill the entire disposal unit later in the day. We've seen that this guy is attacking multiple places, so it might not be the only spot, it's probably hit number 2. Also, what if this guy can take parts of the kaiju and create new kaijus from them? I mean, another theory that I have is that, since we have evil kaiju, does that mean that we have room for good kaiju as well? Will there be more incidents like Kafka where kaiju merge with humans, or is Kafka like a once-in-a-lifetime occurrence? I mean, imagine if this story pans out to have Kafka leading a squad of kaiju shifters. The one thing that I've seen in the comments down below is that pretty much all of us agree that Kafka is a great main character for us older heads. Yeah, we like My Hero Academia, and Vigilantes is amazing too, but Kafka is a main character that we can all really relate to. We have to buckle in now because we know a lot is coming from Kaiju number 8, and I personally think that it's doing well enough not to get canceled, but I don't have any statistics in front of me, so don't fucking quote me on that shit. We'll have to see though, we're only on chapter 9. Time Paradox Ghost Rider only got 14 chapters? That cancellation sucked. The manga had some promise, but I guess a story about plagiarism really just didn't hit right overseas. That's a rant for a completely different video though. Maybe manga ranting is something to think about in the future. But either way, that's gonna do it for this week's video. If you enjoyed this video, be sure to hit that like button, that way I know to make more Kaiju number 8 content. And be sure to send in those submissions for the fan art court contest to exclaimsmedia@gmail.com, or with the hashtag on Twitter, #DanArt. The winners will be announced the first week of October, so be sure to get your submissions in and win a chance at a copy of Avengers, Ghost of Tsushima, or NBA 2K21. Other than that, this is Dan signing off. Cheers.